Good evening and welcome to the 2025 ASG Presidential Debate. This year's voting starts in just over 24 hours. Tonight you'll hear directly from representatives of the four teams vying for Northwestern's top spot in student government. I'm Wilhelm from the Northwestern News Network.
And I'm Janelle Mella with the Daily Northwestern. Tonight's program will include questions from us on important issues, including funding for student orgs and campus demonstration policies. The candidates will also answer questions from ASG representatives that were gathered from the student body. First, let's meet the candidates participating in tonight's debate.
First is co-presidential candidate James Lafayette. James is a third year and the current ASG Senate parliamentarian. He's also ASG's Chief Justice and head of the Rules Committee. He's running alongside second year Jamal Amaniyi.
Next up, Ishan Chandani, a Weinberg second year and vice presidential candidate. He's running alongside presidential candidate Aryan Kalavila. Ishan is involved in a number of student groups on campus, including Mock Trial, Ahana Dance Project, and Tufan Entertainment.
Ben Griesmeyer is a Weinberg second year. He serves as vice president of the North Area Council and is running as co-president with third year Tulsi Patel.
And last but not least, second year Gauri Adarsh is a co-presidential candidate, running with third year John Cisco. She has served on ASG's Analytics Committee, the Student Activities Finance Committee, where she's the deputy co-chair of Research and Development.
All candidates have agreed that each side will have 1 minute uninterrupted to answer a question. They will also have 30 seconds to follow up with a response if their name is mentioned by another candidate. We've got a lot to get to tonight, so let's jump right in. Each team will have a minute and a half for their opening statement. Let's start with you, Ishan. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Ishan Chandani, and I'm running to be your next ASG Vice President. Because Northwestern deserves leadership that listens, leadership that acts, and leadership that follows through and delivers. Right now, students are frustrated. They're frustrated with an administration that doesn't seem to listen to them, policies that don't seem to cater to their needs, and an ASG that all too often feels out of touch. So Aryan and I are running to solve that. That means tackling accessibility on campus. It means boosting unity through community and supporting affinity-based organizations that make people feel welcome at Northwestern. That also means actually implementing transparency, not just using it as a buzzword on the campaign trail. And that means amplifying your voices so that when you speak, administration listens. Now, Aryan and I have talked to so many of you throughout this campaign, and we've talked to organizations as well. Because this campaign isn't just about us or anyone else on this stage. It's about you. It's about your voice, about your needs, and about your future. So let's move Northwestern forward together. Thank you.
Ishan, thank you. Now we'll go to James.
Good evening, students. Before we begin this debate, we need to take a look back at the past year. Several events have forced us to question our own morality. Events like our own peers and our own mentors being unjustly persecuted for using their own voices. One of the biggest student-led protests in the country begging the question of whom we value as humans, and a new federal government hell-bent on dismantling communities and using their vast resources against the most vulnerable. And now we must look at what is to come. A potential uprooting of financial aid, abductions of our own students by ICE and other federal agencies, and a revocation of student visas for those who dare to use their voices. Will we go quietly into the night, or will we too dare to use our own voices? We need a strong student leadership, leaders who aren't afraid to use their voices, leaders who know how to get results, who understand the importance of building coalitions, leaders who will put in the hard work. That leaves us with one choice in this election, and that's James and Jamal. We've shown time and time again that we have the qualities to lead. Over the years, we've worked with many individuals and organizations to achieve visible, impactful results, with accomplishments like authoring the People's Resolution, subsequently leading to the revival of the Advisory Committee on Investment Responsibility, as well as continued efforts to provide resources to DACA students. We've shown that we have and always will stand with those who require our support the most. And because of that, we are the best choice in this election. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, James. Gauri?
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with all of you, and John and I are thrilled to be able to get the chance to run for your 2025 student body presidents. John and I, after our service on the President's Committee called the Cabinet and on Executive Board, have figured out the best way to target the greatest issue targeting this student body, which is community development. So we focused on three main things: communication, action, and transformation. Communication will link our student body to our student government. All too often, like my fellow candidates have said, our student body feels disconnected from our student government, but that should not be the case. We are representatives for you guys. We want to be your student advocates. And so through policy, like putting QR codes all around campus and putting boxes all around campus, so you have a say in what policy we have. Through ASG, we want to establish that connection, that communication. Now action. John and I want to work on the 201 policy, Safe Ride, the Student Activities Assistance Fund, and a lot more. We also want to work on our Senate, representing our students' ideas and bringing it to policy. Finally, transformation. We want to make sure that the ASG is accessible for all students, so all of you feel like you can get your ideas heard and seen through your student advocates on this campus. We are here for you, so vote J&G for ASG. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ben?
Thank you, Janelle and Lance. At the heart of Tulsi's and my campaign is a simple yet profoundly impactful motto: the 3 F's: food, facilities, and financial stability. We believe that regardless of representation in ASG, the most important thing that a senator, a president, can be is relatable. We believe that every student should be able to come up to us and say, "Hey Tulsi, I've got an idea for your administration. Can you implement it?" Or, "Hey Ben, I've been struggling with this. Can you help me out?" What Tulsi and I bring to the table is a unique experience and a diverse perspective. Tulsi's been a senator in ASG for numerous quarters, and I'm on my 2nd year of vice president for area council. Our diverse perspectives and experiences work in complement with each other. In addition, we have a joint determination to be genuinely engaging, impactful, and excited to serve your Northwestern community. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. We'll get on to our questions now. And the first question tonight, what do you see as the most pressing issue facing Northwestern students, and how would you go about fixing it if you were elected? Ben, we'll start with you.
I think the most pressing issue at Northwestern is the inability for students to connect with each other due to different perspectives and no way to really connect with the other side. We're at one of the best universities in the nation, and I think each student should acknowledge the other side's view. I think each student needs to know that with ASG, their ideas, their thoughts will be heard. Tulsi and I intend to have a public forum at the start of every weekly meeting in which students can sign up via Google form and come in with a presentation, an idea, or a challenge that they want to be solved. And I think by implementing this policy, we'll be able to reach more students, hear more voices, and be more equitable for all students.
Thanks, Ben. Gowrie?
Like Ben said, community development is the most pressing issue facing our community right now, especially as we have this new administration targeting our students, targeting our marginalized groups, targeting our international students. And the ASG has a special role in protecting our students. That's why in our action platform, we have advocated for a legal resource for all of our students to be able to call upon that's free, that they can talk to about sexual assault, undocumentation, they're getting legal representation for the international community. We also have targeted our SAAF fund, so that's Student Activities Assistance Fund. That is for our lower income students to be able to participate in group trips or to participate in community development. We want to expand that for our students to make sure that they can participate in whatever they feel like. So John and I really want to work on this together, and that is through our policies, and we will institute them. Thank you.
Thank you. James, you next.
Thank you. So as ASG parliamentarian, I talk to a lot of people inside ASG and outside ASG. And the main sentiment that I hear from students around campus who are not involved in ASG is that they don't really understand what ASG does. They think ASG only funds student groups, and that's clearly untrue based on initiatives that we've introduced, such as the Chicago Shuttle and Books for Cats. But students are not visibly seeing the changes that ASG is making on this campus. In ASG, there's a 4-tier hierarchy of information. Cabinet, executive branch, everyone else in ASG, which includes the senators, and the students. The average student on campus is always at the bottom of this hierarchy, and this causes students to lose out on information and resources that inform them how to live their lives on campus. So me and Jamal would first improve ASG's visibility by posting more on social media, being more physically visible on campus, and engaging with students regularly and their student groups on a regular basis.
Thank you. And now Ishan.
Yeah, so I agree. I think the biggest issue that's pressing Northwestern students is the ability to connect with leaders on our campus. For example, students don't know how exactly to make their voices heard when they have issues that they care about. And the first step of that is making sure that people feel more connected to ASG. From all the conversations that I've had with people over the past week, it's very clear that people aren't sure how ASG actually operates on the inside, and especially coming from people like me, for example, that don't necessarily have direct ASG experience, it's important to make sure that those students feel like their voice actually matters and that voice can actually be translated into action. So as president and vice president, Arian and I would work to make sure that there's a public forum for people to voice their concerns, to make sure that those concerns are addressed by student government, and to make sure that we have those tough conversations with administration so that those concerns don't go left unanswered, but rather they get implemented into direct policy.
Thank you all. As you know, one of ASG's main responsibilities is to allocate funding for student organizations. This year, ASG is managing over $2.8 million in funds. If elected, what would your priorities be in distributing these funds while maintaining fairness across student organizations? Gowri, let's start with you.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad I get the chance to talk about this because I currently work as the deputy chair for the finance committee. Caleb, who is the current president of ASG, was my mentor all throughout this situation, and he did a lot of work with making ASG funding a lot more equitable for our student groups. For example, for affinity groups, we grant them a little bit extra. We look at their grants more carefully, and we also make sure that the appeals process is fair. So if you feel like you weren't granted enough, you are able to come to us. We also made the appeals pool larger. We have also made the new student organization fund larger. So we have tried to help out our disadvantaged populations, our new student organizations that are trying something and need to get some leverage to get that going. So I absolutely understand this concern, and we've worked on it already. We will continue to do that work. It is at the center of John and I's platform. We want to make sure that all of our student groups feel represented, and a big way to do that is through the financial funding that they get. Thank you.
Gowri, thank you. James?
Yeah, so I just want to bring up some facts. In 2024, Young Americans for Freedom and College Republicans received their entire lower bound of $27,000 combined. These were used for events that promoted transphobia, racism, and sexism. Meanwhile, affinity groups did not even receive some of their lower bound, reliant on other methods to receive funding, including Senate. Some of these groups include NASA, Hillel, Rainbow Alliance, International Students Organization, and multiple theater organizations and community service groups who require money in order to buy equipment and get transportation to the locations that they need. So funding needs to be allocated to affinity groups first and foremost. South State shouldn't have to rely on Senate appeals in order to allocate more funds to these affinity groups. And I question why one of the deputy finance chairs, who is right here, would allocate funds in this way.
Thanks, James. Ishan, you're up.
So Arian and I's approach to funding comes in 3 steps. First, we want to boost information throughout the process before people actually have to apply for funding. We've talked to a lot of organizations, and especially organizations that are just starting. People don't understand specifically how they can actually access the funding that ASG can distribute. I've talked to so many organizations that missed the deadline for the first time, or they actually didn't know how to submit their application. We want to create one consolidated place that people can go to easily so that they can apply. Then second, the actual process itself. That process is really restricted right now, and if you're not in ASG, the the actual meetings that go on to distribute those funding are pretty secretive and behind closed doors. So we want to make sure that those are open to the student body and that clubs can actually attend those to input their needs. And then finally, after funding is actually decided, we want to make sure that clubs and students have access to the information and they can see where every single dollar goes so they know what problems are there and what problems aren't.
Right, thank you. Before we get to you, Ben, we do want to go to Gowrie really quick because James did mention you. Gowrie, you have a moment to respond.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to talk about this. Every single student organization that files a funding application towards us, we have to consider. We have to consider them equitably, and also Caleb has done a lot of work to make sure that our affinity groups get that extra priority. So we look at the quality of the funding application. We cannot necessarily discuss what they do, what necessarily with their events they do. We need to fund every single student organization on this campus so that they are allowed to host events. That's just how the finance committee works.
Thank you, Gowrie. And Ben, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, one of Tulsi's and my main points is financial stability. And I know a lot of my other candidates have talked about affinity groups, but they left out a lot of the athletic clubs and the Greek life that to a lot of people is their home. It's where they find their place. And obviously cutting costs from any affinity group is wrong. So that begs the question, where is all of our tuition money going? The school gets over $270 million a year, and ASG gets just about $3 million of that. With A&O Productions and Dillo Day and Mayfest, that's where a lot of the funding goes. I think that Tulsi and I, our main point is to work with administration to see how we can get more money actually invested back into the students that give the university its name and its prestige.
Thanks, Ben. Another big part of the job is serving as the chief liaison between administrators and students. How do you plan to communicate with admin and hold them accountable in fulfilling the demands of the student body? Let's start with James.
Yes, so me and Jamal as co-presidents, we want to be highly communicative with the student body. We want to provide regular updates from ASG and more in-person events to connect with the students on a physical level. We propose periodic State of the Union addresses from the co-presidents in order to update students on important issues. Not only being communicative with the student body, but listening to them as well. We would regularly meet with student groups to assess how ASG is treating them and what their needs from ASG are. And then we will bring those concerns back to administrators to negotiate solutions. However, as presidents, we need to have hard lines on certain issues instead of policies that will create more problems than solutions for the student body. Thank you.
Thank you. Ishan?
Yeah, so James and I actually agree on this one. One big part of Aryan and I's plan is to have monthly forums and public addresses from the administration to students. We want to make sure that there's a space for people to directly ask us questions so that we can take those questions and bring them to administration. One thing that we really want to stress is that Aryan and I are willing to have those tough conversations with administration and senior leadership. We've done it in the clubs that we've already been a part of, and we're willing to do it now. We know that when it comes to student needs and what people are passionate about on this campus, we can't just take that first no for an answer. We're willing to have those tough conversations, go from person to person until we find someone that can truly advocate for us and bring those solutions to reality.
Thanks, Ishan. Ben?
A lot of my fellow candidates have talked about ways that they would implement reaching students and hearing students' voices to bring their points to faculty, but they never actually talked about how they would talk to administration. I think one of Tulsi and my main points is that in order to see action from administration, you have to be action from administration. You have to gather these inputs from your fellow students and then actually reach out to administration members, schedule meetings, let them know that the students want specific things implemented in our community. And if that doesn't work, Tulsi and I are willing to put in the work, go to local newspapers, talk about how Northwestern isn't being responsive to the needs of their students. I think by being a strong supporter of what the students have to say and actually taking action on that is what's going to fundamentally change the way Northwestern goes about its business.
Thanks. And how about you, Gowrie?
Yeah, absolutely. So ASG does serve as that chief mediator. And John and I have already established relationships with admins. So Susan Davis, the Vice President of Student Affairs, we have a strong relationship with her. We have already been in communications about these major policies like Safe Ride, 201, and et cetera. So we understand how to kind of navigate around administration and how they need information delivered. And about that student body part of it, our communication part of our platform really focuses on getting the student body's input. So through those QR codes, through that, through the boxes, we can kind of get what students want from our student government. But another thing we want to do is host a leadership summit every single quarter with our student organization leaders. Leaders from every organization, whether it be Mayfest or the Ping Pong Club, will attend these summits and kind of talk to us about what they need to see, because these are our touch points into this community, and they know better than maybe we do what changes we need to see financially and politically, legally, and they can talk to us. We can communicate that to administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Gowrie. As some of you mentioned earlier, over the past year, university policies over demonstrations and free speech have been in the spotlight more than ever. For example, Northwestern has banned demonstrations at the Rock, a prominent campus spot for students to express their views before 3 p.m., and barred overnight demonstrations. What are your views on those policies, and how would you work with administrators to allow students to freely express themselves while maintaining campus safety? Ishan, we'll start with you.
Yes, so Aryan and I agree that on campus, students' First Amendment rights are one of the most important things that as ASG presidents and vice presidents we can protect. We know that over the past year there's been so many events going around in our world where students feel the need that they have to speak up and voice their concerns not only to administration but also to the general public in general. And we want to support all of those initiatives. Because this administration has been targeting people that have been supporting specific causes, we want to make sure that we connect those students with administration and have those tough conversations to ensure that Northwestern uplifts those students' right to speak out. And we know that that doesn't necessarily just come from our input. We know that Northwestern responds to media. And we know that if we pressure them by connecting with the media and by voicing our concerns to not just at Northwestern, but to the public, then they will respond and they will understand that people's First Amendment rights need to be protected, point blank, period.
And Ben?
Tulsi and I have two main points on this. The first is that we're one of the best schools in the nation. I might be biased, I think we're the best, but with that being said, we need to be able to engage in productive discourse with people who don't hold the same views as us. Not being able to communicate with another side makes a problem unsolvable. So that's our first point. We want to foster an environment in which people from opposing sides can come together and engage in communication about how to solve any issue. And I think what we have to do as representatives of the student body is protect people's rights to promote their ideas and their beliefs, while also maintaining relationships with those who may not agree. We have to appeal to both sides, or else we're completely cutting out one half of the argument.
Thank you, Ben. Gowrie?
The main priority for John and I is student safety. I had a lot of friends who were actively protesting, and their major fears were that they wouldn't get a job, that they wouldn't get employment, that they wouldn't get an internship because they were protesting and speaking their views. And as students, I believe that student activism is at the core of this country. That's how we've made serious change, how we made progressive change, and we need to continue to enshrine that value at this campus. So one thing John and I will do, and what we've already done, is ensure that administration does not discriminate against our students that are speaking their views, that feel strongly about these kinds of issues, because we're students. We are the ones who are given the chance to make change. And like Ben said, we are at one of the greatest universities in the world, which means that we have a unique platform. We deserve to be able to talk, to speak our views, and the way John and I will do that is ensure legal safety for our students who decide to talk about their ideas. So demonstration policy, I believe, should be come together about, but the first thing is safety for our students.
Thank you. And James?
Yeah, so Jamal and I have been active in passing Senate legislation that addresses important issues on campus related to protesting and preparing for possible incoming injustices by the government and by administration. And one of the greatest bulwarks of this is the People's Resolution. We were some of the chief architects on the People's Resolution, which called for NU to be transparent in its investments. We need leaders who are dedicated to justice and inclusion and protecting our student activists. We showed that we can take a strong stance on issues that not only affect our students, but the country as a whole. And this has had a visible impact on the revival of the Advisory Committee on Investment Responsibility. While hundreds of students, staff, and community members signed the resolution, only 3 of the 8 candidates in this election were present at the passing of it. 2 of the 3, me and Jamal, were involved in the authoring of that resolution, and the final candidate, who is not on stage right now, chose not to support the People's Resolution. And actions like these demonstrate a lack of commitment to the ideals of justice and inclusion. Leaders cannot be indecisive or neutral in their support of students.
Thank you all. Communication with the student body around what ASG does and how it functions has historically been a challenge. How would you promote a better understanding of ASG to the Northwestern community? Ben, you have 60 seconds.
Well, Tulsi and I've talked about our plan to implement a public forum at the start of every meeting, which will help the students who know about it be able to share their beliefs. But I think that even more importantly is getting the word out to students that their voices do matter, that we can uplift what they have to say and actually listen to them, implement it, and deliver on our promises. And I think a way to do that is implement more social events hosted by ASG, more committees dedicated to improving campus life, and getting the word out there that ASG is a government of the students, for the students, by the students.
Thank you. Gowrie?
Yes, of course. John and I have a 3-pronged approach to kind of tackle this communications issue. The first thing is adding an outreach chair to our communications committee. Currently we don't have that, but our outreach chair would be able to facilitate these kinds of conversations around campus and make sure that our parent and family orientation and our Wildcat Welcome Week kind of has this ASG influence in it, so we can really consolidate these resources and talk to our students about what is present on this campus. Secondly, we would make sure those QR codes and boxes are all around campus. You won't be able to miss them, and you can submit your concerns, your opinions. John and I want to hear what you have to say. We believe that you guys are the best representatives. We want to be student advocates for you. You are our first priority. And finally, the Student Leader Summit that I've already talked about. Our student leaders are the touch points to this community, and they can tell us issues that we haven't seen yet. So John and I have been in communication with some of the largest organizations on this campus, and they've told us things that we didn't know about before. So that's useful for us in informing our policy, and we will continue to do that if we are elected in. Thank you.
Thanks, Gowrie. James?
Yes, so I've addressed this earlier a little bit. As I said, there's a 4-tier hierarchy in ASG, and I believe that we need to end that hierarchy. Officers who are at the top of ASG should be very communicative with the rest of ASG and the students in projects and initiatives that they are working on. Additionally, ASG has a publicity problem. So ASG has an Instagram and has social media, but we don't really post a lot, and whenever we do post, it's for students to do something for us. We want you to run for something. We want you to vote in this, and that needs to change. We need to be more communicative with the students on projects that we are doing through those channels. And I would actually say I agree with Gowrie. As a 2-time freshman peer advisor, I've mentored over 20 freshmen in their first days of Wildcat Welcome, in their first 2 quarters of Northwestern, and I can say that ASG's presence at Wildcat Welcome is not good enough. We should be working with the Office of Student Transition Experiences to promote ASG.
Thank you, James. And to close us out, Ishan.
So Arian and I see this as sort of a 2-step approach, right? So first is a little bit more publicly. As I've already talked about, we want to establish those monthly public addresses where students and media organizations can come, ask questions, and voice their concerns. When we do that, then all of those student voices can be translated into ASG meetings where those policies can actually be addressed. And then the second step is more behind the scenes. We've talked to so many organizations on this campus that feel like they don't have a voice heard within ASG, and we know that we want to add that representation. So while some larger organizations have direct representatives into ASG, we want to make sure that all those smaller organizations also have people that they can look to, have a specific person they can reach out to for questions, and have the ability to actually attend those ASG meetings and get the things that they want actually implemented. We need to bridge that gap between students and smaller organizations and ASG so that we don't just look at the select few, but we look at the entire student body when we make decisions.
Thanks, Ishan. When we come back, 2 representatives from ASG will be here to ask some questions submitted by the student body.
Don't go anywhere. You're watching the 2025 ASG Presidential Debate. We'll be right back.
Trying to work my way out of the prison system was the most difficult challenge of my life. It only became tangible once I became a Northwestern student.
One, two, three, four.
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city. Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
So we have 400 or more student organizations on this campus. So one thing that John and I have said that we want to do is do that Student Leaders Summit, because our student leaders are the people who know best. John and I do not want to continue to speak for the rest of the student body. It's you guys that we want to hear. It's you guys' ideas that we want to inform policy. And that is how we really create that more communicative student body, that more connected student body. Because if you know that we care about your opinion and policy, I think that that facilitates that more collaborative space where all of us can kind of come together and decide what our 4 most priorities are in funding, in representation, in government policy, in Senate. We have all of these powerful structures to really enforce policy, to kind of inform our student body. So we should be utilizing them and optimizing them to the fullest extent. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Ben?
I think one of the best ways to foster connection among students is through food. That's one of our 3 main points. I think, for example, we have one of the largest Asian student percentages in the nation, and we would like to partner with at least one Asian restaurant in Evanston to replace or be in addition to some place in Norris, because we believe that having authentic food there and also in the dining halls will allow students to actually transition better to Northwestern. It'll allow students to come together with other like-minded individuals and support their own heritage. I think that through food, we will be able to show students that we care about where they come from and we understand what they want and what they need to feel at home here.
Ishan?
Yeah, so Northwestern is one of the most diverse campuses in this country, and we have so many people from so many different walks of life and so many different organizations on this campus. But the one problem that we don't have solved is the fact that none of these organizations are collaborating on a regular basis. So under our presidency and vice presidency, Arian and I will use ASG resources to incentivize groups to collaborate with each other. We want to make sure that if groups want to collaborate with each other on campus, we'll use those ASG resources to push those collaborations and advertise them to the student body. Because while we have so many different strong voices on this campus coming from so many different backgrounds, what is really important is connecting those voices and allowing people to learn from other people's perspectives. Because when we do that, all of us become better people, become more educated, and have a better worldview that can lead us to a better future.
All right, James?
Yes, so I believe one way to connect this campus is to build more cross-coalitional solutions to problems. So me and Jamal have the plan of restructuring ASG to hear more students and more student groups. Right now, the ASG Senate only allows 20 student groups. 20 student groups that are supposed to represent all of the students and student groups at Northwestern. It's not representative of the whole student body, and therefore me and Jamal propose creating a larger forum for students through restructuring Senate, forming cross-coalitional solutions to common problems. Students can already come to ASG Senate and introduce and pass legislation, as seen recently with organizations Fossil Free Northwestern and Advancement for the Undocumented Community. But because of the 4-tier hierarchy, that information is not being passed down to students. Students currently do not think that they can create change through ASG. And so to connect everyone on this campus, we need a stronger ASG presence.
Thank you all. In many ways, being ASG president is like a full-time job, and one of those ways is the time commitment, which can exceed 40 hours per week. If elected, how would you balance your ASG responsibilities with your classes and other student organizations? We'll start with Ishan.
Obviously, this campaign is all about trust. When we're running this campaign, we're telling you to trust us in order to lead the student body and to put in all of that effort to make sure that what you guys want on this campus actually gets implemented. Arian and I are 100% committed to diving in and putting in as much work as it needs to get all of those solutions that students so desperately want on this campus. That time commitment isn't going to be an issue for us at all because we know what comes first in our priorities, and that's you, the students on this campus. We're committed to putting in that time to get everything that you guys want and more.
Now let's go to James.
I can say this as a McCormick student, and actually I can say this as a dual degree McCormick Beanin student. I certainly know how to structure my time. So ASG, as you said, is a full-time job. But for an effective co-president, ASG must be a priority. To be an effective co-president, you need good time management and commitment to the students. And if that means dropping some extracurriculars to do so, that must happen. You have to be committed to the students. It is your first priority. And I would say that as co-president, we would be committed to the students.
Gary, go ahead.
John and I have worked together as a duo for the last 2 years. We allocated $2.8 million together with our finance committee, and we know how to work together. We know all the bad things and the good things about each other, and we are excited to start this job for the students, and we know how to allocate responsibility to each other because we've done it. And also, the finance committee is already 15 to 20 hours a week. We understand what an investment in ASG means. We know how to serve you. We've worked for that already. And we also understand that we can't do it alone. It takes a village, and that's why with our executive committee, we want to restructure and allocate the jobs that they really want to do, the things that they feel that they're best structured for, because a lot of our executive committee is extremely intelligent people who are extremely competent, but the presidents often don't allocate enough to them. So we want to make sure that we do that and that our executive committee is fully invested, knows that they're valued, and knows that what they're doing is impactful. Thank you. And Ben?
Tulsi and I are only two people. We can't solve all of the world's problems, let alone all of the campus's problems. But what we can do is allocate resources to the Senate and to individual students so that they will feel empowered to actually make meaningful change on campus. Tulsi and I know what it is like to balance a million different things on our plate and still succeed in all of them. I've been a part of ALPAs in Amaze, area council, plus being pre-med and a double, perhaps triple major. I know how to balance my time like James. And Tulsi as well has a lot on her plate with ASG Senate and all of her classes. I'd like to point out one thing as well, that there is a bio exam after this debate, and one of my fellow candidates is not here, the presidential candidate for Ishan, because he wants to focus on the bio exam. Additionally, he said he was not attending classes this week, and I don't think that that's available.
On to our next question. For months, Northwestern has been under the microscope of the federal government, including just this week when the U.S. Department of Education launched an investigation into anti-Semitism on campus. Now, putting aside political motivations for a second, how do you plan to address the situation? What can you do to create a more welcoming, less hateful campus community? We'll start with Ben.
Anti-Semitism, racism, sexism, all those isms are flat out wrong. They attack people for being who they are, and as a university, we are here to uphold that. We're here to hold students' rights, students' availability to represent themselves as a human being, as an individual. I think that ASG needs to be the voice of the students while also maintaining respect towards all students, because at the end of the day, what are we as a university if we can't just be a cohort of a bunch of like-minded individuals with different beliefs, different perspectives, but all striving towards one goal, and that is improvement?
Valerie, a lot of our students feel threatened right now. And our foremost priority is the safety of our students on this campus. That's why John and I will advocate for a legal resource for all of our students, our undocumented students, our international students, to make sure that there's somebody there that you can talk to, not just the ASG presidents who are college students as well, but somebody who is credentialed, who can make sure that you stay safe on this campus. Now, this is a pilot program, but we may be able to grow it if the Trump administration continues these kinds of threats on our students. This is a campus where every human being should be able to feel safe, to be able to feel heard, and we want to make sure that our students know they can come to us if they feel threatened on this campus, and we will provide them the correct resources. Now, if we find we don't have those resources already there, present for them, we will have an immediate conversation with our administration, which we have those connections with, to make sure our students feel heard and know that there is something out there for them, they can find a solution, and that something will happen.
Ishan, you're up next, but if you'd like to respond to what Ben said, you're welcome to.
I would love to respond. So as Ben mentioned, Aryan isn't here today, I'm here today. I would like to say that, one, yes, Aryan is studying for his bio exam just because he thought that it was important, and I voiced my willingness and actually want to come to the debate stage. So that's why I'm here instead of Aryan. I don't think that that means that he's not committed. Also, I'm not sure what Ben means by him not going to classes. I'm his roommate. He's been going to classes all week. So that's just my response to that. It's a little bit silly. Going back to the actual question, though, Aryan and I just want to say that we stand firmly against any sort of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, xenophobia, or any other form of discrimination on this campus. We hear you, we see you, and we're with every single student that fears for their safety and wants to make sure that they can express their identity freely on this campus. So first of all, we are here with you, and if we're elected, we'll stay here with you. But second of all, we want to facilitate those conversations between affinity groups and administration, because that's truly how we can bring the student body together. If we have separate affinity groups stay in their own echo chambers, we're not going to build inclusion. We're just going to build people opposing each other until it becomes this big situation where the public gets involved. What we need to do instead is facilitate healthy conversations where people can learn from each other, level each other, and make sure they see everything from people's perspectives, and they make sure that they're collaborating, not fighting.
And James?
This administration and also this question kind of ignores the main problem at hand, in that this all stems from the genocide that is happening in Gaza. We have to stand with Palestinians, Jews, Muslims, and fight firm against hatred, not just anti-Semitism and not just Islamophobia. Right now, I'd say that for ASG, it's a little bit bureaucratic at the moment, and that makes it very hard for the executive branch of ASG to quickly respond to crises such as the ones that were occurring this past year. And so as co-presidents, me and Jamal would seek to make ASG more efficient in responding to these crises and standing up for the students when instances of hatred occur.
Thanks all. Lastly, what sets you apart from the current ASG administration, and how would you ensure meaningful change and not empty promises? James, the floor is yours.
Well, I've worked extensively with Caleb and Malik in the past. As parliamentarian, I feel that I bring a unique perspective to ASG, being sort of a liaison between the executive branch and the Senate. I've seen projects in the executive branch and I've overseen projects within the Senate. And I believe that from this position, it's easier to understand the separation between the two branches and the ways that we can mend those flaws in ASG. And so I would seek to connect the two branches more, as well as end the four-tier hierarchy that currently exists within ASG.
Thank you. Ben?
Historically, people of the dominant culture have felt attacked or threatened when an outsider tries to insert themselves in a situation and fight for what they believe is right. In this instance, I'm the outsider. I do not have ASG experience, but my co-president running mate, Tulsi Patel, has plenty of ASG experience. So I think running with her will allow me to enact meaningful change from an outside perspective while actually knowing how to enact this change. I think my involvement in other student groups makes me more relatable than the other candidates. I believe I'm more involved in a diverse set of activities, clubs, organizations, and I make connections with each and every student I meet. So I think that Tulsi and I share a very unique, diverse perspective that will allow us to enact more change than the current administration.
Ishan?
Yeah, so Aryan and I bring a diverse perspective, first of all, just because of our involvement on campus. We're involved in so many different organizations, whether that be our affinity groups, entertainment groups, comedy groups, dance troupes, and pre-professional organizations. We want to make sure that all of those perspectives are heard when it comes to our government. But secondly, like Ben was saying, we also come from the outsider perspective, like beyond ASG. While Aryan does have some ASG experience, I'm outside of ASG, and we come with that perspective, which is important because there's so many groups on this campus that feel like they're not heard by ASG, so many people on this campus that don't know how ASG works, and we want to make sure that we work to make sure that those voices are being voiced in ASG rather than it just being this clique of people that have insider information, insider knowledge, and can use their friends to bolster their own needs.
And Gowrie?
Firstly, I just want to pay some respect to the previous administration. Caleb and Ty Malik have been like leaders and complete mentors for me and John. And when we go into this next administration, John and I will uphold those values that Caleb and Ty really enshrined. But we'll also make sure that what we're doing is communicated to the student body, and the student body is able to communicate back with us. Because only so much can happen if the student body kind of doesn't have that say in what's happening, and they don't really know. So one thing John and I want to do is the President's Address. Once a month, we want to talk to the Daily or NNN about what's going on. That means not just our policy, but kind of the reports that our admin is telling us about, the Clary Act, sexual assault cases on campus, that kind of thing. And we want to communicate that to our students so they know kind of the current situation and they don't have to read through those lengthy reports as well. We want to make sure that we love this current administration. We know them very well. We want to make sure that work is continued and enhanced. So thank you.
Thank you all very much for your answers. When we come back, candidates will have the last word during closing statements.
Trying to work my way out of the prison system was the most difficult challenge of my life. It only became tangible once I became a Northwestern student.
One, two, three, four.
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city. Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
Welcome back to the 2025 ASG Presidential Debate. We've heard a lot from our candidates tonight, but it's time to get to our closing statements.
Each candidate will have 90 seconds to deliver their closing statement. Let's begin with James.
Tonight we've spoken about the challenges we face. Challenges that threaten not just our rights as students, but our very identities, our communities, and our futures. We cannot afford to be passive in the face of injustice. We cannot allow complacency to dictate our actions. This election is about more than policies and promises. It's about the kind of student body we want to be. Northwestern needs to be a sanctuary for those who no longer have a safe space at home, or those who seek to find community in an unpredictable time. We've seen what unqualified leaders can do in positions of responsibility. They dismantle communities, they misrepresent the people they were entrusted to care for, and they prove ineffective in fostering real positive change. We as a student body cannot risk putting people in charge who do not understand the importance of community, people who merely have concepts of a plan. Jamal and I understand how to navigate the structure of ASG. We've seen both its flaws and its strengths, and we're more than qualified to mend its weaknesses and improve its capabilities. We put in the hard work of collaborating with those inside and outside of ASG to serve the student body, as demonstrated by the numerous endorsements we've received from affinity and community service groups like FMO, the Black Student Union, the Muslim Cultural Students Association, the Asian Pacific American Coalition, the Advancement for the Undocumented Community, and the Rainbow Alliance, among others, which most of the other candidates cannot say. We're determined to continue putting in the hard work and serving the student body as best we can, regardless of the outcome of this election.
James,
and that's why you should vote for us.
Ishan?
Hi everyone, I just want to say thank you for tuning in tonight and listening to all of us. So I'll leave you with this. This election isn't about experience, it's about action. For far too long, ASG has operated as this distant bubble that's so out of touch with the student body as a whole. We've talked to so many of you this week that don't know what ASG is, how ASG operates, and so many of these smaller organizations are being left in the dark by an administration that's supposed to be supporting them. Now, Arian and I want to change that. We want to break that cycle. And to do that, we want to show you that we can connect with students, we can connect with organizations, and we can build a campus that's more united. When we say that experience doesn't matter, what we mean is that it doesn't matter if it doesn't translate into direct action. However many days, months, weeks you've been on ASG doesn't matter. What matters is how connected you are and how much understanding you have of the students that feel left out of it. So under our administration, we want to make sure that those voices that are being ignored are uplifted, that those smaller organizations that are being pushed to the side, they get a voice. That's what an Arian and Ishan administration will look like, and that's what we're committing to you. So I want to draw you back to what I told you at the beginning of this debate. And if you're looking for leadership that acts, leadership that listens, and leadership that is student-driven, then we're asking for your support. Because with Arian and I, it's not just about us. It's not about resume building. It's not about keeping the status quo. It's about you.
Thank you, Ishan. Ben?
At the end of the day, this election isn't just about 2 names or 8 names on the ballot. It's about you as a Northwestern student, your experiences, your needs, your hopes for the future of our great community and our great school. Tulsi and I are not running to sit in meetings and make speeches and wave our hands hoping that magically something is going to change. Tulsi and I are here to act. We're here to fight for food that accurately represents our community of undergraduates that hails from over 75 plus countries and even more cultures. We're here to advocate for facilities that allow students to go about their day, go to bed and wake up without having to worry about being too cold or too hot. We want every dormitory, every residential building to have heating and air conditioning, the basic needs that our tuition should cover. And we want to push for more financial stability and transparency. We want financial literate graduates so they can succeed in their careers beyond undergrad. And we also want students to not have to work while they're at school to go, support themselves, to make sure they're hitting the paycheck for next quarter. This is not just Tulsi and my campaign. This is your campaign too. So let's do this together. Vote Tulsi and Ben for your next ASG co-presidents.
Thank you, and Gowrie.
Thank you. Safety and security for every student at the school is essential. Our country is in a political crisis right now, and we need to ensure that every student on this campus feels safe and heard. John and I have both the knowledge and the passion to make this happen. I understand that some of my other candidates on the stage right now have said that experience doesn't matter. I would like to contest that. It does, because John and I know how to navigate the system. We know how to talk to administration. We know how to address our student body, and we understand the Senate and the executive leadership. We understand what they want, and we understand how to communicate with them. I do think that's critical in a time that we need to be able to move fast. John and I don't have that learning curve. We are ready to make change within the first week in office, and we know exactly what to do. We understand that our housing affinity units, we want to continue our progress on that. We want to make sure that our low-income students can contribute in activities that they so desperately want to through the Student Activities Assistance Fund. We want to make sure that our funding is equitable and goes to marginalized groups, as well as is in full communication with our student group leaders. We want to make sure that we know every student on this campus and know what they want from us. And we have the policies to ensure that that happens. So vote J&G for ASG. Thank you.
Thanks, Gowrie. And thank you to all the candidates for representing your teams at this year's debate.
Now it's time for the students to have their say. Be on the lookout for an email from ASG about how to cast your ballot. Voting will start tomorrow at 7 p.m. and stay open until Saturday at 7 p.m.
That's going to do it for us. Thanks for tuning into this year's presidential debate. I'm Janelle Mella.
And